Wow, that music just gets me so energized.
You like that?
I like the 2021. We starting out awesome. New music, new ideas, new mindset. I couldn't ask for anything better.
A new partner.
And a new partner. Let me do this. Let me do this. Yeah, new partner. Yolanda Smith, the brandologist, to keep us.
I think it's branthropist.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Look, it's 2021. I'm not going to get everything right, but you're right. To help us move forward. Let me explain to you what this episode is going to be about. We went through 2020 with all kind of questions and who we are, what's the next step, who do I trust, political issues, you name it, we've experienced it. Confinement, pandemics, and more importantly, not knowing who we are as humans. If you followed the podcast last year, you saw a whole variety of individuals sharing their stories and in their beast frame of mind. Some of them were rock bottom and they got out. We definitely had Yolanda. That's why having Yolanda back, because out of pretty much all the guests, what she stands for is clearly what we need to start learning how to do, and that's not necessarily reinvent ourselves, but taking our brand, our name. That's the most important thing. Our name. Who are you? 2021 is about the why. We know why we were born, but we need to know a little bit more deeper, the why. We need to know that from the late Sam Cooke, a change is going to come. And that change has to start with you. And today, on the show, we're going to address that. How do we recognize these things? How do we change? How do we reprogram our mindset? The two guests I have on here are well respected in their fields. And let me explain to you why I say that, because one of them is my therapist, Steve Cooper. Great therapist. Yeah, you're probably like, wow, Andre goes to therapy. He's black.
Really?
But you know what? Hey, this show is about, I hold no holds bar. You know what I'm saying? This man has helped me in ways that I could not imagine. And I deal with people all the time. And I remember him telling me when I was in his office one time, he said, Dre, you're a trainer. You deal with all kind of people every day. How do you cope with them? And I didn't know that sometimes people you can recognize issues. Let me not even use the word issues. Let me rephrase that. You can recognize things in people that hurt them. And when you recognize things that people have that have impacted them in some kind of way, your mind begins to hopefully put yourself in their shoes and then be able to relate. Steve's gonna help me validate that or make sure I got it in the right word. So we got Steve Cooper, and then our other guest is
Deborah Riley. We're so excited to have her with us today too.
Deborah is awesome in her field as well. She deals with all sorts of trauma issues. You know what? I'm gonna let them introduce themselves. I'm not good with that. So, Steve, welcome to the show. Let's start out with Steve first. Steve, how you doing?
Hi, Andre. I'm doing really well this morning.
Tell us a little bit about Steve.
Well, I I've been a therapist in some form or another for 20, 22 years, somewhere around there. Um, Married, got 3 kids in their 20s. Um, yeah, I like what you said though about being able to look at people, whether they're your clients in the gym or just out in the world in your families, and being able to see beyond just surface interpretations of their behavior and words, and to see where that's coming from, what's going on inside a person, and being able to develop that depth of vision. But that's what my practice is about. That's what my work is about, being able to see beyond the surface and to help people to look inside in their own depth, and then to see what's going on in other people. It's good stuff. So,
Deborah, welcome to the show. Give us a little bit about
Hi.
you. How you doing?
I'm good. Good to see you, Yolanda. Good to see you, Andre.
Hey, tell us a
Happy
little
to
bit
be
about
here.
what you do.
Well, I am a mental health therapist. I'm licensed in the state of North Carolina. I have a couple of specialties. My main specialties are marriage and family, trauma, LGBTQ counseling, as well as sex therapy. But I would say the bulk of my work is trauma, and the bulk of my research, as you know, Andre, you and I have had conversations. I have research that I've been doing with my partner, Dr. Bryce Kay, in North Carolina, on trauma and how we can begin to rewire the brain around trauma.
With that said, this is how we're going to do this. Feel free, Steve, to chime in on the conversation as well as you, Deb. We went through this heavy question mark last year. You know clearly what I'm talking about. So my question is, and I'm pretty sure Yolanda say the same thing, what was one of the biggest things that we saw people having to deal with, and how, from either you or Steve, how do you really address that with people? Because people aren't going to come to you and say, I got help. Let's start, for instance, with the isolation. All of a sudden you've been told you got to stay in the house. Now you got depression. How do you deal with that? What are some of the things that you saw, and how do you recognize and move forward with this?
Well, I think the thing that is important to mention is that we sort of had this collective experience happening that was overwhelming for everyone, right? We didn't just have the pandemic. We also had environmental extremes. We had fires, we had earthquakes, we had flooding, we had hurricanes. We also had all of the stuff going around race and culture. We had the political environment, which was completely polarized and extreme. And we had economic factors on top of it. People are losing their jobs. People are taking pay cuts, getting furloughed. And all of that has a direct impact on mental health. And so as such, we've seen a 30% increase in suicide. It's now the second leading cause of death among 10 to 35-year-olds. We've seen a huge rise in addiction, relapse. People are medicating because they don't know how to handle all of the overwhelming stress happening all at once. And so those of us in the mental health field, and I'm sure Steve can attest to this, have been inundated with people who have, what we call AMI, which is all mental illnesses like anxiety, depression, that kind of stuff. But then we also have the SMI categories, which is severe mental illness, people who are dealing with severe mental illness who maybe cannot afford their medication, or having to titrate down, taking half their medication, not taking their medication. So we're seeing significant impact of mental illness during this time, in addition to the billions of dollars in our country that's getting lost to productivity, people missing work because of anxiety and mental illness and addiction, and then over $1 trillion globally it's affecting. So it's a huge impact that needs to be addressed. Me personally believe that we can only change ourselves, right? Like, we can't change the world, we can't change the collective, but we can work on ourselves. I personally stay away from I'm broken, I'm hurting, I'm damaged, and go more towards how do we get you restored, right? Let's get restored to what you were always intended to be when you came into the world before life happened. So that's more the focus of the kind of work that I do, restoring the brain to where it was supposed to be all along.
So just curious, are you seeing a lot of new patients coming to you or new individuals coming to you, or is this a lot of your prior patients now re-emerging?
Here in North Carolina, I have a waiting list for my waiting list. And I'm hearing from people all the time, other therapists who are struggling to keep up with their clients, because then you have the clients that want to come back in and you want to give them priority, but if you're already filled, a lot of people are seeking help, and there's not a lot of resources available because everyone's sort of taxed right now in the field.
Steve, what about you? Have you seen a difference with the people in Indiana?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I thought when the pandemic started and I started working from home that my caseload would go down, but it has shot up. It was already full, and I could work 12-hour days, 7 days a week, and still not see everybody. So, what are some of the biggest topics that you're dealing with here in Indiana? Because Indiana's being considered one of the hotspots for just the virus in general. So, without relation, but what are some of the biggest cases that you're seeing unfold here in Central Indiana? Well, it's the same. It's just more intensified. So you have families fighting with each other, or people who have addictions, that the addictions are increasing because they're isolated, or you have, parenting issues that are intensifying, kids that are in homeschool or online school, and their families are struggling just to get them to even do the work rather than sleep and play video games all day. There are so many things coming up, that kids' mental health issues are, the isolation that a lot of kids are facing has been very hard for them. Have you been seeing a lot of kids lately coming in? Have the parents, I'm hoping that the parents are seeing this with their kids. Are you seeing an increase as well, like Yolanda said, with children coming in, child behavior modification? Yeah, there are a lot more children coming in for sure since March. Kids just struggling to make it. I mean, straight A students whose grades have dropped, they're failing classes now, or it's or kids who have mental illnesses, but the stress of being isolated is kind of exacerbating the symptoms or the family process issues. So yeah, it has increased since March for sure. Do you see more of an increase from a therapist standpoint, that more people now, because let's get real, a lot of people ain't gonna go to a therapist. So what do you think the end game is here? Is people turning to more self-medication now? You or Deborah can answer that question. Are people trying? What are the outlets that people are trying to do to fix themselves? Because clearly, we're in a situation where we need people like you and Deborah to tell us what to do. And I think there are more people turning to therapy, but there are also more people turning to alcohol or opiates. The opiate crisis in the country has increased. It was already bad, and it has increased quite a bit since the pandemic. A lot of people dying. So people are turning to all kinds of either trying to have healthier outlets or healthier coping skills, and people are also turning to their unhealthy coping skills, and it's increasing quite a bit. So what have you seen, Deborah?
Well, we have a mode in the brain that is designed for survival. All species do. If the zebra is on the African plain and the lion is chasing it, it's going to go into survival mode. But Homo sapiens are the only species that can create fear out of thought. And consequently, we stay in survival mode 80% more than we were ever designed to stay in it. And as a result, that is where we get anxiety, depression, even physical illness, right? Because we're staying in this clenched, telic state of mind to survive. And the key to this, though, is the fact that it's fear out of stories, right? Like we create these stories of fear. And so a big part of therapy, when you come to me anyway, is let's dismantle those stories. Let's look at the familial patterns. Let's look at your relationship patterns, and let's see why you are prone to create this story of negativity and fear. Let's dismantle it, and in some cases, rewire it.
Let me ask a question here. I'm glad you brought that up. You or Steve, what is the big story that's causing the ripple effect with these people? Is it the fear of the pandemic? Is it not understanding racial placement in the world? Is it even, like you said, even the presidency? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm seeing people turn against each other for a simple election. So either you or Deborah can answer this. What is the biggest contributing factor that you've seen so far that people are going, I can't get through this. I don't even understand why it's happening.
Well, that is the story. The story is, I can't get through this. If this person does this, then I won't be okay. If this happens, then I'm going to be harmed. If this happens, then I won't be able to cope. That's the story. But what we're not doing is we're not dialing it down to the individual and asking the simple question, do you want to be happy? Because that's the only question that matters on a day-to-day basis, because we can find happiness in any state of external existence. But the internal decision to be happy is on us.
So it's mindset.
Exactly, Yolanda. So if I can look out in the world and say, this is a disaster, the world is falling apart. Or I can look out into the world and I can say, the world is falling into place. I have a choice. I can believe that everything is happening for my higher good and that I'm going to be okay, or I can believe that I am in danger. And it doesn't matter what the story is, if it's a race story or a political story or environmental story. If I make someone a villain and a victim, I am going to create a story of negativity.
But if you've
I
lost
stay
your
autonomous to myself, I can find peace and serenity.
Yeah, but if you've lost your job, let's just look at the other thing. There's external factors, but then there's those things that directly impact you. So let's just say hypothetically someone's lost a job, then on top of that they've lost a loved one to COVID this year. I mean, how do we help these people to get through what they consider insurmountable tragedies on top of each other? I just had somebody today post, I lost my mom yesterday and I lost my job over the weekend. And I'm thinking, whoa.
Yeah. So back in April, my son got COVID and he was in the hospital for a week. He almost died. Now, prior to him getting COVID, he had gotten his Navy SEAL contract. Took him over a year to earn it. So he got a ship date. Here he's got the story right. I'm going into the Navy. I'm going to live happily ever after. And then now he's got COVID and he's in the hospital for a week. And they say he probably won't live. Now, he did live. And I can tell you, since he's come out of COVID, the way that his life is unfolding has been to his higher good. Could he have seen that in that moment? No. Could I have seen it in the moment? No. I'm a mother. I'm riddled with fear. I think I'm going to lose my son, right? But has it worked out to his benefit? Yes. And it continues to work out to his benefit. And that's the hard part, because when we have these negative emotions of pain, loss, sorrow, it's important that we feel them, that we experience them, and that we learn from them. But what will be to our detriment is to write to a story that says it's ruined us, or it's the end, or it's bad, or it's negative, and not part of a higher plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, how do we triumph? Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Steve,
Yeah,
you mentioned
what-
you've seen a lot of family dysfunction because of the isolation and so forth. What are some of the reasons that you feel that's causing the family to be so? What's one of the biggest elements that's causing the family dysfunction outside of the COVID? Have you seen some unforeseen issues?
Not really unforeseen issues. Families have always been dysfunctional, so I don't think that's new because of the pandemic. But it's maybe with people being isolated at home together, or trying to survive in a dysfunctional economy, some of those have become worse. But like as Deborah was saying, family dysfunction, it comes from people's stories. People develop stories early in life based on their own family experiences, their own cultural heritage, their belief systems, the dysfunction in their family home, the traumas they've gone through. And they develop stories in their mind in which the central character is the traumatized person. And then they go through their lives projecting that trauma outward and interpreting future experiences according to prior childhood experiences or other traumas. So part of the rewiring is being able to help somebody see their story, to see the story that they are interpreting their life through, and then to help them to differentiate that internal story or that interpretive model from other ways of interpreting things, and then to then try to clarify what's actually going on in the moment, as opposed to my brain's way of interpreting things.
Let me ask you a question real quick. Stay right there for a minute while my train of thought is here. One of the biggest things we had was, and this is something that's been going on since the evolution of man, which is, I don't like using the word racism, let's just say human identification. From a therapist standpoint, why is that so genetically hardwired in us that we can't seem to get along as a species, but the first thing we do is we resort to color and empowerment over one another? Now, you just said something about genetic hardwiring. I mean, why is there a solution to this? Because I think I'm hearing you guys say you can reprogram us.
I wouldn't call racism, or I wouldn't call those things genetically hardwired. I would call a lot of our survival instincts and our tendency to create in-groups and out-groups, and to advocate for our in-group and to oppose the out-groups, however our brains define those things. Maybe that has some genetic evolutionary basis to it. I don't know. I would assume probably it does.
The affinity, we have a tendency, to do what's comfortable and what we know and what seems like us, right?
Yeah, I mean, we like to form groups that we are part of, that we advocate for against all the dangers in the world, and we try to help those groups to succeed. And we make the mistake of seeing other people as out of that group, and either people to use and dominate or to fight with. I think as time progresses, hopefully we'll continue the progress out of that more primitive thinking and into more of an understanding that we're all part of the same group.
Deborah, what do you think about that question?
I think that as a whole, we lean towards what I call mind-centered thinking, which operates on the pendulum of the ego. And on one end of the ego, you have, I am the most important person in the world. On the other end, I'm the least important person in the world. And all day long, the ego looks to reinforce those stories. So when we are operating from mind-centered thinking, we are constantly creating stories of you're a victim, or I'm a victim, or you're a villain and I'm a villain, or wherever you are in the pendulum of the ego. And the problem with that is that then somebody has to be less than or greater than. If we can make a shift as a whole down into heart-centered thinking, where we are more interested in being of service, or gut-centered thinking, which is we're just in a state of being, then there is no division. And it's a practiced state because we are so programmed to create subgroups and others, right? And a lot of it is based on ignorant patterns, is what I'll say. Family messages that have been brought down through generations.
Learned behavior.
Real. Right, learned behavior, that's exactly right. And so oftentimes what around this issue, it's just getting to know different cultures, getting to know educating yourself on other populations so you can see the similarities of the human condition versus what is separate. And then we have those historical stories that a lot of people are still attached to, instead of operating on what is happening now. And what is happening now is an opportunity, right? An opportunity to see the division that's going on around race and culture and to begin to understand it and heal around it.
Give me an example of the historical stories that you're talking about. Give me an example.
Well, a lot of people hang on to what's happened historically, like, for example, white populations that think they're superior because of A, B, and C.
Slavery.
Or slavery would be
Yeah.
an example of a historical story. Yeah. And they're detrimental to our society today if they're not learned from. And we're seeing that. And I think that was the biggest surprise over the last year was, wow, this is really still this significant. There are still people that are still this afraid of another race or population.
How do we get past, whether you or Steve, how do we get past that? Maybe that's the issue that we need to start focusing on. What are some of the signs that people, this is how I say that.
Yeah.
How do people know that they have a problem? And if they don't, how do we learn to correct this problem? It just didn't surface. It just, what's the word I'm going to use, Yolanda? Somebody lit a match.
And it caught on fire.
Fire. It's not like it's...
you poked the bear.
You poked the bear, and you've been poking the bear for years. But all of a sudden, boom, everybody's like, oh, well, where did this come from? Evidently it's been around. So what is the treatment plan to move forward for people to say, I got a problem. I need to go see a therapist. Why am I thinking like this? Or is people so self-absorbed, kind of like what Debs was, I guess, saying, that they don't give a fucking rat's ass how they think? Is their belief or no beliefs?
I mean, I think that the question you're asking, how do we solve this problem? A problem that's been here for thousands of years in one form or another. I don't know if the problem is something that we can easily solve. But in terms of in groups, out groups, me and mine versus, others, people have been functioning that way for many thousands of years. So if the question is, how does somebody come to the awareness that they need to examine what's going on in their mind?
Right.
Usually what motivates people to do that is pain, emotional pain. And when they're in pain, when they're fighting, when they're struggling, and they hear of or have an understanding of what kind of resources might help them resolve their pain. Unfortunately, there are some people in the world who, the way their psychology functions is they have ways of denying their pain. They don't feel it, and they compensate for it in one way or another. And it's hard to get those kinds of people to admit that they need therapy, because they, on the surface, they pretend that they have everything under control. They may even fool themselves into believing they're under control. And so usually those types of people go to therapy when somebody else says, I'm going to leave you, or there's going to be some kind of pain if you don't go to therapy. Mm-hmm. But everybody's so different. So what would motivate one person to go to therapy versus another? There's a lot of variables in place.
And then you have the cultural stigma around therapy.
What's the cultural stigma?
It's, in the African American community, you don't go to therapy, you go to the pastor. You go to church. You don't go.
Who told you that?
Well, this is because I do.
Who told you that?
Andre, you said it earlier in this meeting.
Mama, no, I'm just
you said
telling
I'm black and I go to therapy.
He's the anomaly. It's not that they don't, but there has been a cultural history of denying that something's wrong. It's the same thing in terms of, even if you look at disease and illnesses, you don't go to doctors for certain things. That's a sign of weakness. It was shown to be a sign of weakness. And typically you will find that African Americans turn to the church more so than the doctor.
So I'm considered an outcast because I went to Steve.
You're not an outcast.
Steve, we got a session.
No, that's not. No, I'm just giving you some historical context to it, and it's amazing. And so that's why you see a lot of people will seek other ways to take care of it, because nobody, if you think of therapy, it's not about really healing the inside in the minds of some people. It's about them being deemed I hate to say the word, but
Say it.
crazy, or
Crazy.
something's wrong with you. And that's the stigma, that's the stereotype we have to break so that people can get the help that they need. Which kind of brings me, I just had one question for you guys, and I think this is important. When I think about where we are today, we're hurting, right? And we need some healing. And when I think about that, one of the things that came to mind as you two were talking is that typically we will mimic what we see people that we admire, our role models, our leaders, our parents, what they do. So if they're in a state of chaos and things are going gloom and doom and they're giving us the presence, right, that the ship's going down and sinking, how the heck do we right size that so that it doesn't have that trickle down effect?
Well, I think, for me, I think that's a great question. I think the biggest thing that people have to understand is that the only thing we have control over is ourselves. That's it. I can't control anyone around me. I can't make anyone think the way I want to think. But that has a much more powerful impact than people give it credit. If I'm living my life with openness, joy, love, acceptance of others, then I'm giving everyone permission around me to do the same. If I'm living with anger and distrust, always waiting for the other shoe to drop, then I'm putting that energy out there as well. In the other thing too is I just want to touch back about what Andre was just talking about. In my practice is a multicultural practice. So I would say 80% of my clients are a different culture or race than I am. And part of that is because I have a responsibility to be multiculturally trained as a therapist. And there are a lot of therapists that don't do that well. And so then when you do have someone from the Black culture or the Asian culture or the Indian or Muslim culture that finally crossed that scary barrier for their culture to come in and get counseling, if you are offensive to them because you don't understand or appreciate their culture, they're not going to come back. So there's an onus on my field to get more culturally educated and understand other populations and other cultures so that it does feel like a safe environment to come to. And to Steve's point, people change for two reasons. One, they're in enough pain, or two, they're inspired. And so we can put the collective energy towards young women like Amanda Gorman, who was so inspiring at the inauguration, and away from some of the less inspiring people out there, right? And just starting to make that shift towards positivity and hope, which we desperately need as a country right now. And we do that individually first. It comes back to me. What am I putting out into the world with my words, with my attitude, with my acceptance of others? What am I putting out there and giving other people permission to do? And also, where am I setting boundaries? I'm not going to tolerate hearing certain kinds of language and speak around other populations and other cultures. I'm not going to allow that judgment into my space out of anyone. I don't care how close they are to me. So it's loving boundaries. And then also, what am I putting out there?
I got either you or Steve can answer this question, and I'm gonna talk about something first. And I strongly agree with that. I was telling Steve, my first therapy session was with someone that clearly I was uncomfortable with. My second session was with a Dr. Santa Maria, out of Ohio. And it's funny how we think. I saw him and I was like, excuse my French, what the fuck is he going to help me with? Because he was Hispanic. I prejudged before I even got to know the man. And I said the same things. He's not black. He can definitely not understand what I'm going in. Oh my God, was I wrong? One of the best therapists I could have him and Steve was probably the best therapist, or the best therapist I've ever dealt with. And I think, from my standpoint, I think what made it comfortable for me was I knew Steve wasn't African American. I didn't go in there looking like that. I think he was able to sit down and listen to what I was going through, and he helped me understand that a lot of the things that I was dealing with was traumatic. And I kept it, that trauma so deeply embedded in me that I was one of Steve was able to, let me put it like this. He taught me that how to classify, I guess that's the word I want to use, different people's pain. And once I understood everybody's pain that I came in contact with, now I had the choice to either put myself in their shoes and relate to it, or I can walk away, because my first instinct was they're grown. They can deal with their own stuff. But then I realized the world isn't like that. We all have suffered some type of trauma. That's what you do for a living, trauma. And once you're able to understand that, and your life becomes a little bit better, at least as far as I'm concerned, a little bit better. But as a therapist, you and Steve, how do you get people to come to you? I mean, nobody's going to go, like Yolanda said, nobody's going to admit that they got issues. I mean, you see couples every day that fight. It's your fault. You took the peanut butter sandwich. You know you did. You know, and I'm pretty sure you guys hear stories, but how do you get your word to the masses that, like Yolanda said, it's not, you're not crazy when you're trying to seek help? You or Steve can answer that.
I think that therapy is becoming more and more and more accepted as time goes on. And in history, you know, even when I was younger, a lot younger, before I even considered going to school to become a therapist, I would have not wanted to go to one. You know, I would have thought, what can this person help me with? Or I don't want to talk about all my stuff to a stranger, you know. But I think as we progress in our awareness of ourselves, you know, as a human race, the more we understand about ourselves and each other, the more ideas like therapy or self-exploration are becoming more and more mainstream. So a lot of the attitudes that people had 20, 30, 40 years ago, they're shifting, they're changing. But that's true, hopefully globally. We're becoming more and more aware of ourselves as a species. And the more awareness we have, the more the ignorance falls away. So hopefully that just continues to progress. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Deb, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I agree with Steve, but on the same hand, I will say it's not my job to go out and reel people in, right? So I'm here for anyone who needs help. But if we look at what are the biggest predictors of success in therapy, it boils down to two things. One, do you trust your therapist? That's the most important thing. And then two, is there a willingness? Because a lot of people say they want to change, but they don't really want to change, you know, because if you think about what does it take to really affect change, to get restored to what you were intended to be, you're going to have to go through uncomfortable experiences. You're going to have to own behavior maybe you don't even want to look at. And you're going to have to allow yourself to feel emotions that you've been medicating for a long time. And it takes a lot of courage to do that. People that really go into therapy and go there to affect a change in their lives in a positive way are brave, are really brave people. And so for me, with my sort of existential philosophies, I don't feel the need to go out and seek that out. I wait for people to ask for my help. And then if I can, I will. Because that willingness is kind of like trying to make someone quit drinking who's not ready to quit drinking, right? You just can't do it. Until someone is done with something, you can't make them be done with it. So,
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you got a question to ask, Yolanda?
No, I just had two thoughts that I thought of, you know, as I know that we're coming to a wrap up. But one is that, you know, in hearing you guys talk today, it came, and it's not new, but in the end, we have more in common than we have different as people. That's the bottom line. And the other thought that came to me, I'm a fan of Charlie Chaplin, and one of his quotes says, "Nothing in this cruel world lasts forever, not even your troubles." So.
With that said, I'm going to ask the final questions to both of you guys. we've seen everything spill last year. This is 2021. This is finding your why, and a change is going to come. Steve, you've always impacted people. You definitely have impacted me, and I thank God that you're in my life. Whenever I needed you, troubles or whatever, you've always been there. You've taken your time as a therapist to go far and beyond the call of duty. Well, when I was down, when I was at my lowest point, you kept my beast frame of mind going. You set me down at my lowest, and I my hats off to you. I appreciate that. Going forward to this day, give the viewers some positive hope to keep that beast frame of mind in 2021. And then, Deb, I want you to do the same thing after he gets done.
Well, I like, what the Charlie Chaplin quote, nothing in this cruel world lasts forever. You follow that quote, and the depth of awareness that is involved in that quote. The deepest place of peace we can come to is when we recognize that, at least in this life, everything is temporary. All of it is. And when you really meditate on that, then it leads you to a place of peace, a peace that passes understanding, so to speak. And when you have that peace as your foundation to build on, and then you look outward at the world, we live in a crazy world. And even though I'm using that word not clinically speaking, but the people in this world can be crazy. And whether they're in your family or in the community or the world at large, all you have to do is read history books or watch the news. When you have a deep sense of internal peace from that foundation that we were just talking about, then you can, from that place, manage the craziness of the world around you in a way that isn't full of the panicked, ego-bound story that we tell ourselves that the fight or flight process takes over and dictates how you handle life. From a state of peace, that fight or flight process is not going to take over as much. And you will be able to manage the craziness of the world around you, and you won't be crazy with it. So, Deborah's work, people in this field, there's a deep awareness that, we can help people to attain that takes the crazy out of the story.
Deborah.
Takes our own crazy out of the story and helps us to then become be the change that you want to see in the world. And the more people that are doing that, the better it all gets for all of us.
Sounds like a winner on that one. Deb, give us a closing on that.
We love to write stories of beginning and endings, right? It's the beginning of spring, it's the end of Christmas, it's the beginning of 2021, it's the end of the pandemic, but we really only have one beginning and one ending. Everything in between is just the journey. And if we start to write stories of other beginning and endings, we're just trying to control the outcome. And we can't control the outcome. That's the greatest illusion we live in. We have no control. The only thing we have control over is our own personal thoughts. I can wake up in the morning and say, this is a beautiful sunny day, or I can wake up in the morning and say, this is a hot, crappy day. One of those is going to give me a very different day. So it comes down to, am I going to wake up every morning and make a deliberate choice to be happy, loving, and acceptance of my circumstances and believing that everything is happening for my higher good? Or am I going to contribute to the consistent lack of hope and negativity that's going on in the world? I have a choice, but we have to remember one beginning, one ending, one life. So we get to decide what that life is going to look like and what we're going to bring to the table with our life attitude.
Man, that was
There you have
powerful
it.
from both. Yeah. You know what? And I agree with that. We have a choice. I appreciate both of you guys being on the show today. Please come back again, Deborah and Steve. My co-host, what do you think about today's show? Was there something that I left out that you left out?
I just think it was profound. I think there's a lot of people out there hurting. Our world is hurting, and this is one way to start the conversation to allow people to know that you control yourself, and it starts with you.
People, don't be afraid to reach out. If we all have problems, we all need somebody to reach out to, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a family member, whether it's a friend. Start 2021 on a positive note, like Deborah said, like Steve said. Guys, their information is up on the podcast website. Feel free to reach out to them. Guys, thanks for coming on the show. This has been the Andre the Beast